Harvard University. February 2018, in a groundbreaking genetic study published in the journal Nature, Harvard researchers announced a stunning discovery about ancient human DNA. It reveals that immediately after Stonehenge was built, the people who built it, the ancient inhabitants of Britain, suddenly and almost totally vanished from the British Isles. They left behind virtually no DNA in the modern British population. What the 2018 study suggests is that the genetic signature of the Neolithic inhabitants of the British Isles, it vanishes shortly after the period in which they built Stonehenge, and is largely replaced by an entirely new human culture in a very short amount of time.
The Harvard study is an absolute bombshell. An entire civilization just disappears without a trace, vanishes into thin air. It's easily the most surprising and most shocking conclusion you can imagine. The study used a revolutionary new technique that samples DNA from ancient human bones and then compares it to the DNA of modern people in the same place. Scientists then determine what percentage of the modern population is descended from the ancient group.
So the new genetic data are really providing an example of population replacement, in which the genetic markers that characterize one population is almost entirely replaced in a relatively short amount of time by the genetic signature that characterizes another population from a different part of the world.
The strange disappearance of the Stonehenge builders remains a profound historical mystery. Might it point to a deliberate cleansing of a human genetic line? As ancient astronaut theorists and the flood myths found worldwide suggest. Perhaps further evidence of this, of a confounding genetic lineage that has proven nearly impossible to trace. Emory University, Atlanta, Georgia. Researchers analyzed DNA data collected from various Native American populations in an effort to trace back their ancestral descent through the Bering Strait.
Each line representing a different migration off the Asian continent between 20 to 300 years ago. But what they also find is that a small portion of the native population falls completely outside any previously known genetic group. They can trace the ancestry back 36,000 years, but not to the Bering Strait. Scientists dub it the X lineage. Among human habitat groups, one stands out: the X lineage, which is found in about 2.5% of some Native American groups, and also in a small population of Northern Europeans in the Middle East. And there is no connection between these groups. We couldn't understand why they're so different, these X haplogroups. Isn't it amazing that you have a group of people, indigenous, we think, to this planet, and you really can't trace what their ancestry was? Scientists throw up their hands and they simply say, I don't know how this can be, because these people aren't somehow related to these people. How can this be? While the source of this X lineage remains a mystery, some scientists believe it might be connected to a lost race of people that were said to have existed throughout the world, including North America.
It's possible that this X lineage gene is related to the giants that were reported throughout the world. Starting in the mid-1800s, in America, archaeologists began excavating skeletons of giants who were 7 to 8 feet tall in many cases. In the 1800s, Smithsonian archaeologists unearthed dozens of oversized skeletons contained within the burial mounds of the ancient Adena Indian tribe. the highest concentration of which were found in the Kanawha Valley of West Virginia, an area known to researchers as the Valley of the Giants.
Author and researcher William Henry is meeting up with a local Adena Indian researcher, Jason Gerald, to have a look at one of these ancient earthworks. This is the Creole Mound, and this mound was excavated by the Smithsonian Institution in November of 1883. The Smithsonian sank a circular shaft from the top of this mound, down through the center to the bottom. Wow, and that's where they found an elaborate tomb. This structure contained 11 burials. 10 of these burials were arranged in a semicircular fashion around a central personage, so you have 10 people around a central figure. What was significant about this central figure? According to AR Science, who assisted in the excavation of this mound, the central burial, when measured in the tomb, was 6 foot 8 3/4. Now, the skull had been pulverized by the excavation, so a complete measurement wasn't possible. So in all likelihood, this individual was probably around 7 feet tall. That's a giant. It's a gigantic humanoid. So we're saying the Smithsonian came here in 1883 and discovered a giant. That's correct. In fact, they discovered giants in many of the mounds here in Charleston. There were originally 50 burial mounds in this valley, and some documentation here show you. This is the manuscript of the agent of the Smithsonian, who excavated these mounds. And this represents his day-to-day journal of his excavations, including the one that's mentioned on this page, which is measured as 7 foot, 6 inches in length.
Incredible. Wait a minute, this is a government worker who's out doing a job excavating a mound, and he discovers giants, multiple gigantic skeletons, the ones in this valley being between 7 and 8 feet tall. That is incredible. So why don't we all know about it? How come it's not in history books?
Well, the policy of denial of the discovery of gigantic human skeletons actually wasn't enacted until about 1920. Before that time period, the Smithsonian acknowledged these giants in their own reports. For years, we have been hearing stories, Native American legends about giants. It appears that we've unearthed evidence, proof of their existence here in West Virginia, but for whatever reason, that proof was suppressed. Probably has to do with the fact that it doesn't fit with our model of human evolution. We have to ask, is there an extraterrestrial connection?
You have these biblical stories of the Watchers and the sons of God coming to Earth, breeding with humans to create this new race of giants, Nephilim. These giant skeletons seem to be evidence of the Watchers and the Nephilim. We have to ask ourselves who these 7-8 foot giants were. Were they somehow the vestiges of these giants of the Bible? It's a mystery that archaeologists have yet to solve, and part of the answer may be extraterrestrial DNA that's part of these giants.
We will cover the biblical angle on giants in the sequel of Lost Race of Giants.